Hello, it's Jacob again, and in this video, we'll be picking up right where we left off with the tragedy of the commons. So, we're talking about commons goods, non-excludable rival risk goods, a good for which you cannot prevent people from taking, but them taking leaves less for others. And as we'll see, the problem here is going to be one of overproduction. Now, we mostly associate the tragedy of the commons with factors of production and raw resources. You can get them with other situations too, but those are the main ones. So imagine you have some resource. Well, if you own that resource, you have a stake in rationing it. And this is true whether it's non-renewable or renewable. But we'll talk about the renewable case first because it's a little more obvious. If you have a renewable resource, like say a stand of timber or a herd of livestock, then that stock and thus your future profits can grow over time. You want to maximize your net present value. I believe you will probably have a homework that goes into what net present value is. Suffice it to say, you care about your lifetime earnings. Generally, you don't care about your income in the distant future as much as you do your income now. But people plan for the future. People care about the long term. You don't just live 100% for today. And so the rational businessman that owns a renewable resource would like to grow his stock. Certainly, he doesn't want to completely wipe it out. He could slaughter every hog he has and make a greater profit today, but then he'd be giving up profits on hogs for the rest of his life. He could cut down every tree in that stand of timber today and not plant new ones. But if he did, he would have wrecked his business. You'd have a big payout all at once, and then you would have nothing else for the rest of your life. So someone who owns a renewable resource would like to grow and manage that resource. Farmers want to increase their herds to not take more than they gain. And even timber plantations nowadays work that way. We used to live in a world where there were there was so much virgin forest left that people would just clear cut and move on. But that's not the case anymore. Most timbering is now done as a form of farming. They plant the trees, they wait for them to grow up, and then they cut them down. In reality, you're kind of staggering your planting. You have a big enough plot of land that something will always have grown tall enough, by the time you get to it. Now, even if you own a non-renewable resource like metals or fossil fuels, there's still a reason to ration. For one, you face the trade-off between profits today and profits tomorrow. We would expect that over time, at least provided new deposits are not being discovered, resources would deplete, which means that the supply would decrease, and so the price would increase. And you could have higher profits down the line. That's one reason to not mine everything at once. And then there's also diminishing returns from increasing your level of production. If you had a certain deposit of oil, for example, then you might have multiple different directions that you could drill from. But at a given price, there's a certain marginal cost you're willing to incur, right? There is a certain equilibrium price quantity, a quantity supplied you'd want to deliver. You could exceed that. You could lay down multiple wells, You could mine at a vein of coal or mine at a vein of ore from multiple directions. But you're always going to go for the cheapest option first. You face more and more expensive options as you increase production. And it can reach a point where your profits were to fall. So even as the owner of a non-renewable resource, you don't necessarily try to take everything you can as quickly as you can. What you're trying to do is maximize your profits. And sometimes that means harvesting at a lower rate if it's too expensive to increase the level of production. But what happens if you don't own the factor? Well, if you don't own the factor, then you know that somebody else could move in and loot the resource when you're not looking, when you're not working, and that would leave you with nothing. If you didn't have a private property right over your hogs, somebody else could come in and just kill them. And you would be the one who were stuck with the bill for having raised them, stuck with the cost of ranching these animals. And you wouldn't see any benefit. If you didn't have a private property right in your fields of crops, in your stand of timber, in your field of oil, this would be true. Somebody can wait for you to do all of the work, and then they can steal it right from out from under your nose. Now, you don't want to be left without a profit. And so what are you going to do? Well, you're going to have to move first. If this other person can take from you, you need to make sure that you take yours. And you don't face any cost from taking theirs as well. You want to get as much as you can, as fast as you can, before other people get it. And assuming that even one person thinks that way, that makes it reality. You might have a situation where you and your competitors would all prefer to harvest at a lower profit maximizing rate. But if any one of you starts to harvest the other's resources, all of them have no incentive to play nice. And so everyone now has an incentive to play dirty and to take as much as they can. And this can end up having very dramatic effects on the availability of a resource. It can wipe it out, and it can do it practically overnight.